results. And last but not least, he's also on the board of HSMAI, and he's currently serving as the chair of the Revenue Optimization Advisory Board. And in his spare time, Tim, as well as enjoying spending time with his family, he flies a Cessna 172, which I think is pretty cool. But with all of that, thanks very much for joining us, and welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Carl, and aloha. Thank you for inviting me to attend this event today and to speak at this event. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, and I would much rather be in Hawaii today, but I will have to save that for another date. Hopefully soon for sure. So welcome, everybody. It's great to see so many people come out to this session today. Hopefully you'll find this information helpful. I noticed a couple names here. I'm just going to shout out a couple here, or actually just one. Kent Hall from Vancouver, Canada. Welcome. And of course, welcome to everybody else as well. So why don't we get started with the session today. So we're going to be talking about revenue strategies for recovery. Let me just put myself in presentation mode here. Sorry, still getting used to this technology. 1 second.
It's okay, we all are.
There we go. Okay, so the agenda for today, we're going to do a quick sentiment survey, and then we're going to get right into the data, the US data, and then data specific to Hawaii. And then we'll dive into some revenue strategies, and then I'm sure you guys have questions, so I want to make sure that we have enough time to answer all your questions here this afternoon. So we already did the bio about myself. You're going to notice something today because I enjoy flying aviation so much. I'm going to kind of make it a little bit of an aviation theme throughout the presentation here today. So why don't we go to the sentiment survey. What I'd like you to do, if you've got a mobile device, or you can even do this on your computer, is just go to menti.com, MENTI.com, and use the code 4272744. Again, the code is 4272744. And go ahead and once you get in there, you can feel free to go ahead and answer the first question I have there. A little bit of an icebreaker. Somebody's learning Japanese. Yeah, Netflix definitely counts, by the way. Cooking seems to be at the top of the list there. Gardening, I can get into that. Great, some great answers there. Thank you for that. I personally enjoy gardening. I've been doing a lot of that. My garden hasn't looked any better than it has this year, thanks to COVID. And I do get into some flying every now and then too, but not as much as what I'd like to. So. Okay, let's jump to the next question. So what is your current or most recent job title? Cat herder, I like that one. It's great to see some revenue management folks here today. Sales, marketing. Great. Thank you for that. Next question. Has COVID-19 affected you from an employment standpoint? Give it a few more seconds here. So surprisingly, when I've done this survey, the number of furloughed has been higher. So it's nice to see so many people employed, and certainly wish the best for anybody that's been furloughed and laid off, that things will turn around shortly for you there. So in the next few months, how do you feel about the US tourism industry? Okay, so roughly 3/4 of you really feel pretty mixed, a lot of uncertainty out there. Some of you feel less optimistic. Not a whole lot of you, not anybody really feels very optimistic about the future at this point in time. That seems to be what I've seen in the past, even more recently, just very mixed results there. Okay, and then at this point in the industry economic cycle, do you feel the role of revenue management is? And then you can answer your question there. Yeah, it's pretty overwhelming. Everybody feels that revenue management is crucial at this point. So that's the same question. What do you feel about sales deployment? Okay, interesting. Over half of you really feel it's crucial. Some of you think it's moderate. A few of you think that let's just focus on what leisure travel there is right now, and wait for the other business to come back again before focusing in on the sales efforts. What do you expect to be the #1 source of new reservations in the next 2 to 3 months? This, of course, is assuming that the Hawaii market opens up again. Okay. So OTAs is king here, and then direct would be next, and then wholesalers to that. Okay, and what level of marketing spend is your company planning in the next 90 days? This will be interesting. Okay, again, it's this is similar to other surveys that I've done. Definitely, you know, not a lot of spending happening right now, or in the near future. Any planning for marketing spend. Budgets are very tight at this point. Okay, and I believe this is the last question. What's the most important for your market to see and to see a meaningful recovery? Okay, clearly safety is at the top of the list. Testing, government regulations, government leadership, testing, vaccine. Surprise vaccine didn't grow more there. That's a given, that's going to happen. Okay, thank you for that. So back to the presentation. So the path ahead, as I mentioned, I like flying, and a course I'm taking right now, I'm trying to get a rating in instrument flight. What that means is I can fly in clouds. Right now, I'm a visual flight rule pilot, which means I can only fly when certain weather conditions exist. But to become more advanced pilot, you need to go through an instrument rating course. And so when I'm up training right now, I will either have a hood over my head so I can't see out, I can only see the instruments, or we actually fly in the clouds or in instrument conditions. And right now, there's, you know, when you're in that situation, there's a lot of uncertainty that happens. And if you don't rely on your instruments, you can end up in a very bad situation. So you know, you can kind of parallel that to what we're going through right now. We're very dependent on the right direction from the CDC. We're dependent on science. We're dependent on a lot of data to guide us to a safe landing. And hopefully that will be happening soon. So let's start with the data. And this slide's a little bit old, but what it demonstrates here is how customers feel about when, you know, how they feel about COVID-19 being under control. So starting off back in the earlier months, there seemed to be more optimism that it would be happening this summer, and you can see as we move along, now they're looking at later this year. And again, this survey was done in July, that these numbers, if you did the survey again, would go down. So everybody's really kind of looking at early June, early next year to even later next year before we see any significance in a recovery here. Likewise, when asked a question, you know, when restrictions are lifted, when would you plan on traveling? And again, there seems to be caution in the near term about how much travel would occur. It seems now that the sentiment is around 4 to 6 months or greater before people would feel comfortable or plan, you know, their travel. So even after restrictions are lifted in Hawaii, you can expect that it's going to be a slow recovery for sure. Just looking at some TSA data real quick here. it very much, you know, you can see the drop off. We're starting to see people get a little bit more comfortable with travel, but it's still at a very low level at this point in time. The airports are pretty empty still. Another survey, likelihood of taking trips by trip types. So domestic leisure leads the way. We saw a lot of that here in the mainland US this summer. Domestic business travel, excuse me, it was starting to tick up in June, then kind of dropped off in the summer. We're starting to see that come back again. And just based on conversations that I've had with companies, they're starting to see a little bit more business travel happening right now. International business obviously is very restricted right now, so you're going to see that pretty flat there. Where did people travel? A lot of people traveled to US national parks this summer, and you know, they hopped in their car. Some of them traveled over 200 miles to a national park to spend their vacation this summer. Just goes to show how uncomfortable people are still with actually hopping on an airplane. So some occupancy stats here, the US occupancy, you can see the dip there. We saw good progression every week up until recently, and then it just kind of dipped off a little bit again. We did see, you know, the summer, the leisure travel really drove, you know, the growth in occupancy. The offset in the more recent weeks has been business travel just hasn't been able to compensate for the drop off in the summer leisure business. You can see the dramatic drop off in April. RevPAR declines. We're starting to see that slowly edge back up again. Just looking in for any green shoots that we can find here. And trying to think what this was. This is just a correlation between TSA counts and rooms sold. There's a strong correlation, obviously, to that. And then just kind of looking at different markets around the world. China was the first to recover. And they're starting to go back down a little bit as the number of infections are increasing again. You can see this slow but steady recovery in the US, and then Europe a little bit lagging, but again, they're starting to see the number of cases going up again, and the occupancy is declining there. So as of August 13, STAR put out a new forecast. I think they're going to be putting one out pretty much every month now due to the uncertainty of the future. So right now, 2020 shows a 34% decline in overall RevPAR. And you can see that next year occupancy grows to 52%. ADR starts to recover, and RevPAR goes to 56.95. And I'll show you some more extended forecasts in just a minute here. So here it is with CBRE. They look out a little bit further. So this is a Hawaii market. So you guys had a great year last year, ending the year at almost 82% occupancy, so growth of 2.3%. What a fantastic ADR you had, and your RevPAR came in at 5.7% growth over 2018. So this year they're projecting RevPAR declines of 71.5%. Next year, a growth of 76.3%. Obviously, that's coming off a very negative year. So RevPAR goes back to 129. And then you can just kind of see down the line there, RevPAR doesn't recover until 2024. So we've got a long road ahead of us here. And this just breaks out that same forecast and kind of shows that the mid-priced hotels will recover from an occupancy standpoint and an ADR standpoint a little bit quicker than the upper-priced hotels. Okay, and then just some stats on Airbnb. This is as of Q2. You can see the occupancy decline. That's a year-over-year change, so it's a running 12. Just a slight occupancy decline. Obviously, that as we get further into that running 12, the number is going to go down further. But the big difference here is just even in the 3 months of the 12, you can see the decline in units available for sale. So that dropped by 13% overall. And just kind of reading the news, your governor does not anticipate that the restrictions will be lifted. The likelihood is not looking great. So we're definitely still in the clouds at this point in time. But the Hawaii Department of Business and Economic Development also put out some forecasts. And these are number of visitors to the islands. This is a total here. So the total visitors, again, kind of reflects what CBRE is talking about. The recovery won't happen until 2024. When you look at specific markets, the Western US recovers faster. And again, you can go onto their site and you can kind of filter by market there. So the Western US recovers a little bit faster than the Eastern US, and then Canada, and then Japan really lags in their recovery. They won't be fully recovered even in 2024. We did all the surveys already, so just talking about hotel recovery strategies here. So 5 things to know. What's really kind of come to the forefront is really aligning your marketing strategy with revenue management right now. And I know in the survey, everybody is not really spending a whole lot of money right now, but there's still a lot of efforts that can happen behind the scenes to market your hotel, your particular market. And the silos between revenue management, sales, and marketing really need to be non-existent at this point in time. Revenue management can provide a lot of information that can be helpful for our strategy, both from a marketing and a sales standpoint. Obviously, implementing flexible cancellation policies due to the uncertainty right now. You want to make sure it's as easy as possible for your customers to book your hotel and to be able to change dates. Stats show that the ones that do have very flexible cancellation policies, the customers appreciate that. They may change, but they will likely come back to your hotel. So own in on the right audience and customers. So who you traditionally, the markets that you traditionally go after may or may not be the right markets. So at every point in the recovery cycle, you should be projecting where your target market should be and who you should be targeting there. So, Western US obviously would be first and foremost that you have strong marketing efforts with them. Market to those guests that have canceled and to those groups that have canceled, they still want to correspond with you. They still want to come to your hotel, and they want to continue that conversation. And if need be, you can offer incentives for them to rebook at your hotel. And then focus on the right offers and the right messaging. More so now than ever, customers will be looking at guest review sites. They'll also be looking at your website and getting assurances that their stay is going to be a safe stay. So make sure you have the proper messaging out there to reassure the customers that you're taking all the safety protocols necessary. And then let the data really drive your recovery plan. There's a lot of different data out there. So just, CVB, the airline data, the broader STAR track data, obviously that's not as relevant for the Hawaii market right now, just because you are so closed down. But when you start opening up again, you may want to look outside your traditional comp set. You may want a second or a third comp set as well, really to understand what's happening in different hotel segments on your island or on different islands there. Other resources would be OTA Insights. They have a lot of booking data information that can be helpful to you. CBDRE, TravelClick, amongst other government tourism agencies. Feeder markets, really study the origin segment report and determine what has changed. You'll probably really want to make sure that you're monitoring that closely. And then market your existing and new business. So look at a broader comp set, as I mentioned before, and maybe look at segments that you wouldn't traditionally go after. You may need that business in the short term. And then visibility, what are your competitors doing? Really monitor your competitors closely. Have, various different discounts out there, fenced, of course. And then launch new marketing messaging. Are there ways to break through the noise with your distinct messaging? And then, finally, just leveraging your CRM is really important. If you haven't done that before, really take the time to understand your guests and what drives their buying habits. Pay special attention to guests on the books, communicate to them frequently. Don't just assume that they're coming, make sure that they're communicated to and that you're addressing any special needs out there. And then reach out to guests or groups that have not rebooked yet and find creative ways to encourage them to rebook. And remind them what life was like before COVID. There's an opportunity as you start ramping up your marketing spend again. Social networks, pay-per-click. People are spending more time on social networks right now. And the opportunity to communicate with them has just gotten cheaper. In March, it was 95 cents on average. In July, it went down to 65%. So it's a great opportunity for you there. So what the future holds for sales professionals, structure, flexibility in deployment. The markets that are hot are the ones where you need to deploy right now. Mentioned already, no silos. Revenue management can really help you out with focusing in on the right markets and what's driving right now. And then also consider reviewing your bonus models for those that are sales leaders. Create short-term incentives that align with your short and mid-term strategies overall. And I think this is the last slide. Forecasting. Forecasting is obviously a challenge for everybody right now. And for all you revenue managers out there that are forecasting, it's good to forecast different scenarios and then build strategies around the various different scenarios of how you anticipate recovery to happen, so that your playbook is up to date and you're working on various different scenarios based on what new trends that you're seeing out there. As mentioned at the beginning, I'm also, for your personal development, there's opportunities with HSMAI. There's digital marketing classes. I'm teaching the revenue optimization class. There's a digital sales class and a data analytics class. And you have an opportunity to become certified in each of those. So jump onto HSMAI's main site, type in search for revenue essentials or hotel essentials, and you'll find the details on these classes here. So with the right approach, we can all do this together. And tell me, I can tell you that when you actually break out of the clouds and you can see the runway, it's such a great feeling for sure. So thank you for allowing me to share this information today, and just wanted to then go ahead and open it up to any questions that you guys have there. Do we have any questions in the chat?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I have a couple of questions that were sent over, but I wanted to, I did post in the chat. So if anybody has any questions that they think of, feel free to write them in the chat, or also kind of stick your hand up during one of the pauses. Not literally stick your hand up, but actually go off mute and speak during one of the pauses here if you have questions. But I did have somebody send me a question, Tim, which maybe we can open up with, and that's what are things that, this is about it's about segment mix, basically, and business mix. And the question is, what are things that sales, marketing, and revenue professionals can do to get more direct business out of this coming out of COVID, and not lose whatever direct share they have to OTAs or to other segments, or how not to lose the mix that you, essentially how not to lose the segment mix that you want right now. And I think it's topical, Tim, for obvious reasons, and also during the mentee survey, I mean, the vast majority, or not the vast, but the majority certainly of our respondents think that most of their business is going to come from OTA during the recovery, which kind of makes sense. So the question was really about what people can do to if they've already achieved a more optimal mix, what can they do to maintain that in the short term, or can they?
Yeah, I think there is an opportunity to drive more business direct at this point in time. Not that you want to ignore the OTAs, because you're going to need as much business as you can get at this point in time. But I think I'll speak to myself personally. When my wife and I decided to go on a dry vacation to Asheville, North Carolina, which is about 4 hours from here, we researched a number of hotels, and we called hotels, and we really were looking for a comfort level that it was going to be safe for us to stay at that hotel, which meant that we were looking at guest surveys, survey sites, and we just felt that the information that the Property Direct websites had were probably more likely to be more update than what the OTAs would have. So I think customers are, they may do their research on the OTAs at this point in time, but they may feel more comfortable booking direct. And properties will get more phone calls. So your call centers or your front desk may get more calls coming in right now, just answering questions about their stay, especially in a market like Hawaii. So that's an opportunity for you then to really capture that business once you answer their questions.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for that, Tim. Another question from Veronica. Have you analyzed the impact of the West Coast fires on West Coast marketing?
I have not. That's pretty recent, and I haven't had a chance to evaluate that. But I'm going to be looking. If you go to Hotel News Now, it's a great resource. They have a lot of recent data. that comes out weekly. So they would probably be the first place that I would go to find out trending information on the West Coast.
Okay, it's good to know. How does this is from Kent, but he asked how the group feels, and I guess we'll put this to you first, Tim, but how does the group feel that the continuing closure of the Canada-US border will affect the Hawaii market in particular?
That's a good question. I think Canadians, their stats are better. So I think they're anxious to start traveling again. I spoke to someone recently with Sunwing Airlines. They're an airline charter based out of Toronto, Canada, and they're currently closed down, but they're opening up back in the Caribbean market again, and they see positive signs. I believe they're opening up in November. They're seeing some positive signs. I think people are anxious to start traveling again. So that's encouraging for the Canadian market. I think that some Canadians are a little bit more anxious about traveling to the US right now, and they're going to be looking at the location-specific stats more closely to really gauge as to whether they feel comfortable traveling there.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Glennis has another question. I think we'll ask you this, and I don't know if anybody else has some input on this. I don't know the answer to this question, but it's, is it true that Australia is looking to classify Hawaii as part of a travel bubble, separate from travel to the mainland US for Australian travelers? I'm not sure if you are able to speak to that, Tim, or if we have anybody on the call right now who happens to know that, but I thought I'd put it out there.
Okay, I don't know that stat, so if someone knows it and can put it in the chat, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'd love to hear that if that's the case. Anybody else have any questions for Tim right now? I do have another question, Tim, and this is actually from me, but it's something that's been on a lot of people's minds. I think I've discussed it with a few people, and just because you cover so many different segments, areas of the hospitality business, and particularly with reference to like distressed assets and things like that, you really cover the whole breadth. I'm curious, where are there opportunities for hospitality associates and personnel for now or for the future, areas of hospitality that might not be traditional or might not be part of the traditional career path or something? Distressed assets turnaround, for example. Do you see, and if you have seen, could you kind of identify what you think might be some opportunities for associate growth in the future?
Yeah, so for associate growth, if you're in sales, marketing, or revenue management, the short-term stay, extended stay markets seem to be doing better. US, here in North Carolina, the Outer Banks and so on, and in the mountains, the vacation rentals are very popular and very active right now. So, and that continues into the fall. I believe customers are just more comfortable and they feel like they have more control if they're in a vacation rental versus a hotel right now. So that may be actually a longer term trend. Pandemics like we're experiencing may accelerate that trend that much faster. So I see that as an area of opportunity if you work in the area of distressed assets. Unfortunately, some owners are already handing their keys back to the bank, and banks are left managing these assets. They don't know oftentimes they don't know that much about the hospitality industry. There's opportunity with asset management companies to help operate these hotels while they're in receivership.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. There is another question from Brad. Has it been more advantageous to focus on brand messaging versus product marketing during this crisis? And then he adds, and prior pandemics. I think he's asking if there's data from prior pandemics.
Yeah, I don't have data from prior downturns, but I think, you know, when it boils down to it, customers are looking for an experience, and they may be comfortable with certain brands, and brands are certainly doing all that they can do to alleviate any concerns. And they, you know, customers will look for consistency, and so they'll choose those brands that are more consistent. But I think customers will drill down to that next level, and if they think, for example, that, you know, they like Marriott, Marriott's got a good message, they're going to drill into that property, and they're going to look at the product itself, and they're going to look at guest reviews. They're going to look at you know, what kind of experience that they would expect in this time period, and make their decision from there.
Okay, thanks for that, Tim. Does any other questions? Anybody else have any other questions before we wrap up here? Well, I did see one question, which was whether the presentation will be sent out afterwards. And yes, it will. We're recording this. We recorded this from the beginning. Probably should have mentioned that, but we just standardly record all our presentations now. And if you did register under whichever email address you registered, you'll get a link within the next day or two. You'll get a link to the recording so that you can review that if you need to. So we will be sharing that afterwards. Tim, thank you very much. Very, very informative content, I think, for all of us, and a lot, you know, give us a lot of food for thought, I think, as well. Is there anything else that you'd like to share in terms of where to reach you if people want to follow you or see what you're writing or anything like that? Where do you suggest people go?
Yeah, so the stuff, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, but you can also go to my website,